Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So I'll start off with Laura Kelly, who is the co-host of Force Toast and The Jedi Way. She was in the Ahsoka panel, and so I asked her for some reactions to what happened in the panel and what it was like to be in there later that day. And then Peter, Peter, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna botch the pronunciation. Janeling, something in that neighborhood. So Peter is from Sweden, and he is a friend and a supporter of the show on Patreon. He was in the Villains of the Sequel Trilogy panel and was kind enough to record some recollections after the fact. Now, as we talked about on the podcast previously, there was no new news that came out of this particular panel. However, Ian McDiarmid did do something rather interesting and coy out of the whole thing. And so what I'm sharing with you is what Peter shared about their responses to the question of how they kind of connected with the villain characters and the stuff that they drew from their inner lives and how they were able to manifest the character, if you will. And so Peter is relaying what the responses were from Gwendolyn Christie, who of course played Captain Phasma, Andy Serkis, who played Supreme Leader Snoke, and then Ian McDiarmid playing Emperor Palpatine. So yeah, stick with it all the way through, Ian McDiarmid's, because yeah, he is something else, that's for sure. And that's what I'm going to have for you on today's podcast. So before we kick into those other segments, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be. And now stay tuned for my conversation with Laura and the after-the-fact recollections from Peter. I'm here with Laura Kelly from the Force Toast podcast and The Jedi Way on YouTube, and she was in the Ahsoka panel that I was not, and it's super exciting. So first, what's just your overall reactions coming out of the Ahsoka panel?
My overall reaction is just me still screaming. Everything in my head is just happening in all caps, especially with the Lars Mikkelsen Thrawn reveal. That was the biggest thing for me. I kind of thought the panel was over. They were sort of acting like the panel was over, and then they brought him out, and I feel like my everything in me exploded with happiness. I couldn't believe it.
So they had brought out a few people. They brought out Rosario Dawson and Natasha Liu-Bordizzo and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and then they brought out more people and confirmed more people, right?
They did. So they said they were going to bring out the bad guys. They're like, we're going to bring out the villains, and I thought for sure at that moment then we were going to see Lars Mikkelsen, or we were going to get the reveal or something. And that didn't come until a little bit later. So I don't remember the actress's name, but they brought out the girl that has she's got very blonde hair and bangs. She's wielding a red-ish lightsaber, I think, in the trailer. They brought that actress out, and they brought out Ray Stevenson and revealed that his character's name, I think, is Balon, and that showed up, I think, in the trailer if you watched it with captions, but we got to know a little bit more about him. They also brought out the actress who plays Morgan Elsbeth. She's going to be back, and she talked a little bit about her character and talked a lot about how she is a very loyal person, and I think the assumption is that she's very loyal to Thrawn. We didn't get a lot of other information about why or for how long that's been going on. And then, Lars was the big reveal at the very end. So I gather they showed different footage, similar footage, but maybe remixed somehow from what they showed in the studio showcase. I'm not going to ask you to quote specific things, but what jumped out at you that was different, perhaps? Sabine using Ezra's lightsaber. She had his green lightsaber and was wielding it against the blonde adversary who had her red saber. So they were dueling at one point. It was wild. There's an amazing I don't know if it's a chase sequence because I couldn't see anyone chasing her, but it's Sabine on a speeder bike going very fast and then having to sort of brake and move sideways underneath something. It was just a very, very cool action sequence. So that was amazing. And then, yes, seeing Thrawn from the front. It was brief, but you could see very clearly that it is Lars Mikkelsen, who I've been wanting them to announce forever. I know lots of people have their own fan casting for Thrawn, but I just can't think of a better one than actor who voiced him, so I thought that that was a really perfect fit. I think he looks fantastic. I'll be very curious to see what other people think and how they react when the full frontal of him actually comes out, since we've only ever now seen him from behind, I guess, in the Ahsoka trailer that's out now. But just fantastic. Those were the things that stood out. I'm sure there's more, but those were, the ones that stood out for me.
Did they let him speak in character in the footage that they showed?
Ooh, I don't think so. Maybe they did, but I don't recall. God, I must have missed that, but I want to say no, because I'm not thinking of it, I'm guessing no.
I imagine that's a situation where the moment he appeared on screen, there's just screaming throughout the room, and who could tell?
Pandemonium. It was pandemonium. So yeah, he may have very well been speaking, but both times they showed us that footage, it was just so loud. It was perfect, actually. And that's the experience of Star Wars Celebration, is you get to experience these things in a massive room with all of these fans who are just like you, and it's just perfection. And the camaraderie that you sort of get out of that, even in a room full of strangers, is just fantastic.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your insights about that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for this. This is great.
Gwen went into that it was kind of liberating for reaching for her own darkness, because that's the way she thought after deliberating or was in crash courses of evil with the special people that helps into movies character, and she said that her own darkness was the liberating thing. Then when she put on the costume and the helmet, she was that darkness in her own way, from her own darkness. That was really scary to to hear about, but it's a good thing that actors can do that. Andy was more telling us about the desperate of hanging on to the power. That's the thing that he was clinching about, that's the Snoke thing, he said, and all that massive power comes from pain, and they discussed where the pain came from, but then Ian said that he was kind of the reason for it all. But then Ian told us about that he really didn't know when he was brought in again, because they kept it a secret really to the start of the sequence and the scripting, so he didn't really know. And at the end of the last movie, he thought that, well, he was the one who did all evil through all films, so that's hard to prepare for, he said. And that the only kind of thing that stuck out maybe was that and Amy said, yes, and now he's gone. Who knows, he said, and then the crowd shouted and laughed, and we can probably make something out of it or not. Well, that was fun.
Is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, but their respective trademark and copyright holders, may the force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.